Good morning. You may be hearing everywhere that it's time to over communicate and share your message and go ahead and put yourself out there, but you may not know how to do that. It can feel scary to be seen. Visibility can be hard to know how to do in a way that feels like you're in integrity with yourself. And so I've invited launch strategist and story expert April Pertuis to come share with us today her expertise. She's been in the field a long time, and I think she's got some tools that can really help you that you can take today and start putting into place right now. So April, I just want to say thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
showing up today.
Yeah, I'm excited and I really appreciated the invitation. So
Oh my,
thank you for
happy to have you.
sharing me with your audience.
So I'm going to go mute while you teach. If I have a question, I'll chime in, but I'm going to be typing out everything you say that so we can have a running list of it.
Okay, awesome. Well, I will just jump right in. I'll give you a little bit more of a background of who I am, since probably most of your audience doesn't know me. um, But I really work in the world of storytelling and helping people get visible with their message. And I try to focus everything that I do in the personal stories that we all care. And that can relate to our brands. A lot of times I find that brands don't really know how to humanize their brand. So, solo entrepreneurs, small businesses, even large businesses, right? We're really focused on our products and our services, and we really, are focused on getting that out into the world, but we don't really always know how to humanize that and how to show kind of behind the curtain who the people are that run the machine. And so my background is actually a journalist by trade. So I started out, in my early days of my career as a news journalist, going and collecting stories on a regular basis. And one of the things that I always loved about that work, and how I've continued to figure out how to keep it part of my repertoire, is the people stories, because it's really the people stories that are so fascinating. It's what makes brands unique. It's how you can stand out in a noisy news feed right now, is by learning how to share your personal story. That's a big key piece of the visibility that I teach. And so I have taken all of these years of being a journalist, being a video marketer. I've been in the world of video my entire career, and really now teaching other people, especially in this online space, how to really bring that message to light, and to not always just focus on the products and services, but tell the stories behind the products and services, and tell the stories behind the brand. So that's me in a nutshell. And that's really what I bring to the table and what I try to help people with. So Jen had asked me to kind of think of one big giant takeaway that I could give you guys today, and something that would maybe help you in how you can start to show up. Maybe you're already doing that and you're feeling the pressure to figure out how to pivot and how to even make your business more relevant right now, which is, we're all living through this together. That's the thing that I think we have to keep reminding ourselves, is that we're all in the same boat when it comes to figuring out how to do business in the middle of a pandemic. The other thing is how to do that on a consistent basis, so that you're not, show up and then retreat, show up and then retreat, show up and then retreat, right? That happens a lot, Jen, doesn't it? So this is a really important piece of it. So I'm actually going to give you guys two big things, I think, that will help you. So I'm going to start with your story, okay? A lot of people, when they come to me, they're like, I hear a lot of different things. Number one, I don't have a story. Nobody cares about my story. My story is boring. I haven't lived through some big trauma or big fiasco, and I haven't overcome anything big, so therefore my story is boring and nobody will care. Or I have a story, but I don't know how to share it, or I have a story and it's so big that I feel there's shame and guilt and just junk tied up in it, that it keeps them from being visible and using their voice. So I get the run of the gamut. So probably somewhere, you guys that are watching this, you may find where you are on that pendulum, right? So the thing about it is number one, I want you to hear this. And again, I have been in sort of the interview seat for most of my career, talking to literally everybody from millionaires and high-level politicians, future presidents. I've interviewed a lot of people all the way down to, trash workers, if you will, like literally just the people who are keeping our country going right now. So, and everybody in between. And the universal thing that I can tell you is that everybody has a story. I've never walked away from one of those conversations or one of those interviews thinking, gosh, I just don't know how I'm going to get a story out of this one. Like all it takes is a little bit of conversation. All it takes is a little bit of excavation, and you will find humanity. You will find the person who they are at their core and the things that matter to them, the things they have overcome, the things that they are passionate about. These are the stories that you want to bring to light. And by and large, that's in you, right? Like you need to figure out how to tell that story to your audience so they will get a little bit better insight as to who you are and why your products and services matter, right? So I have a really simple story formula that I'm going to share with you guys today. And I use this for everything. I use this for creating content. I use this for sharing my big story. I use it to teach all of my clients and people that are in my world. So, and this is actually free on my website. So we can share that, Jen, if you want. I'll give you the link. But let me just walk you through it first, and then we'll tell you how to go get the free download so you can kind of walk through the exercise after we're done. Okay. So when you think of the story arc, again, you're thinking, okay, I have a story, but how the heck do I tell that story to my audience? Because, I'm 48 years old. How am I going to tell my 48-year-long story? That's not the story you want to tell. You want to tell your story in 3 pieces, okay? 3 key components, because great storytelling is made up in 3 parts, always. Just remember that. If you tell 3 things, you've told a great story. And so you really want to think about the journey that you've been on, and you kind of want to look at the highlights, okay? We're going to just look at the highlights, and we're going to pull out those key components that will really make your story relevant to someone else. Because here's the thing, your story isn't actually about you. Your story is about the audience that is going to be hearing it, reading it, watching it, whatever. The ones receiving it, because the story is about them. It may give them hope. It may give them some encouragement. It may give them a roadmap of their own to get through their own mess. Our stories really do. And my whole brand is around LIGHTbeamers. That's the name of my company, because I named it LIGHTbeamers because this is how I see storytelling. This is how I see people when they share their story. This is what it does. It shines a light for someone else. So your story is not about you. It is about getting to the point of the story that will make it relevant for someone else. But we have to start with a piece that belongs to you, okay? So my story formula is in 3 parts. There's a before, a middle, and an ending, like all good storytelling, right? Once upon a time, then she met the prince, and they lived happily ever after. So the once upon a time part, right, is usually an identifying marker of in your own history, in your own historical context of your own journey, where were you struggling? Where were things not quite, didn't have it all figured out yet? I liken this to climbing a mountain. So at the beginning of your story, and I call this the before, just your before state, you are standing at the bottom of that mountain and you're looking up the mountain, you're going, holy cow, how am I going to do this, right? Like I'm at the bottom of this journey and I need to get out of it, or I need to move past it. And you're trying to figure out that piece of it. So in our own journeys, can you look back in your life, that big, long timeline of your life, and identify a time, knowing where you are now and knowing that the message that you want to share with your audience, knowing the products and services that you represent and all of that, that's where you are. I want you to look back and think about, where did that journey begin? Right? Where did that journey begin? Because that's the story we want to tell in terms of our brand story. Yeah, come in.
We've got me on mute because there's an echo. So I think a lot of people get stuck at this point because they're like, my before wasn't tragic. I wasn't in the gutter. Maybe like if I'm a weight loss coach, maybe I had 20 pounds to lose. But people think it needs to be this epic, horrible, I'm in a ditch place. And that's not necessarily true when you tell your
Nope.
story, right? You're just trying to get people to understand that you get them. You understand where they are.
I say it's the been there, done that, wore the t-shirt, right? And it doesn't have to be, I love the example of a weight loss coach. If you're coaching people who, by and large, maybe need to learn, are wanting to lose 50, 60, 70, 100 pounds, and you're over there going, I've been skinny my whole life, but I really know a lot about nutrition. How am I going to relate to them, right? But it's about, where did that desire of helping people, where did that knowledge, where did that curiosity around learning more about health, that desire to help people? Maybe it's a story about always being skinny and nobody, could relate to you in some way. You have to find that place, and it's all relevant because we all have different parts of our journey. And I'm one of those people too. As a journalist, I've often had to examine my own story, which I will tell you is the hardest thing to do because I'm so used to examining other people's stories that when I really brought my business online and I realized it is about, sharing our stories to get seen and visible, I had to examine this for myself because I was like, well, what the heck is my story? And my story itself doesn't have a place where I was, desperate or, having to overcome an illness or anything like that. It's just my own story as it relates to what I do was really about, in my early days of my career working as a news journalist. That's what I did. I worked as a television journalist, and I thought I'd worked so hard to get this job and, studied journalism and, made $11,000 a year, just living life off of a credit card just so that I could do the work that I love to do, and realizing at some point that the types of stories that I was being tasked to tell, chasing ambulances, going after, the police and finding the murderers and interviewing mothers after they first lost their children, like really dark, dirty stories, because that's what our news wants to do. We sensationalize our world. And I got to a point where that weighed extremely heavy on me. And so I was coming home from my work every day and night feeling like I couldn't breathe. I literally couldn't catch my breath. I couldn't catch my breath because the weight of the world was quite literally sitting on my chest like an 800-pound elephant. That's really where my story begins, because that was me deciding to climb up the mountain and figure it out. Because I wanted to tell stories. I wanted to tell people stories, but I was here in this place telling stories that did not make my heart feel good.
It's like you didn't want to tell
LIGHTbeamers before I knew LIGHTbeamers was ever going to be a thing.
Well, you made up the whole thing. It's like you knew you didn't want to tell those stories anymore. And I think that this is an interesting point. Like, your before part of your story is, I'm sick of this. This is a non-negotiable for me. I don't want XYZ anymore. It's not necessarily like you were at the lowest of the low. You're just tired of whatever's going on. That's where you're at the before.
Yeah. And
we all have that, right? We all have that. Yeah.
And it's important to let your audience know that historical context before you go and tell the rest of the story. You can't just show up. I can't just show up online saying, hey, I'll help you with your story. I'll get you visible, if I don't let people know how I've learned how to do this, like why this matters to me. Right. And it matters to me because I've been there doing stuff that I really don't want to do, and I don't want the world to be filled with the stories that we get at the top of the news broadcast every single day. I mean, my gosh, right now, how many news feed notifications are we getting right now about this darn virus and how many people are dying? Why aren't we telling people the stories about how many people are surviving right now, right? That's the kind of stuff that was starting to, quite honestly, just piss me off. So that was the agitation moment at the beginning of my story.
Oh, I like that word. So you start with an agitation moment.
Yeah.
And then where do you go after you kind of identify and tell your agitation moment?
So then we got to climb the mountain, right? The next piece of the storyline, so we have 3 parts. The first one is that before, that historical context, that moment where you just are, I love that. I've never used that language before. Might be stealing that after today, that agitation moment. That's a good way of thinking of it. Then we were going to climb the mountain. The next really big piece, and okay, so climbing the mountain, there's a lot of details in between, right? Like we started here and then we're going to get to the top of the mountain. And there's a lot of things that happen in between. This is where people go off the rails with their story. They go, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then I did it this way, and then I went that way, and then I went that way. And so they tell everything, and you start to totally lose your audience because now we're bored. Now we're like, oh my gosh, she's going to tell me her life story, and I don't really care. Because this is when people start making the story about them, right? Okay, we're trying to get to the point of the story so that our story can be about our audience. So get rid of all those details. Nobody cares about how many times you fell off the wagon or how many times you gained that extra 20 pounds and lost it again, gained the 20 pounds. And nobody cares. Okay. The point of the story is the next part, which is the transformation. So when you're climbing a mountain and you're climbing and climbing and you look up every day and there's just more mountain in front of you, what happens when you get to the top of the mountain is you finally see the beautiful vista and the view. You're up high. You're like, oh my gosh, this was so worth it. A lot of things start to make sense at that point. Our perspective shifts. The way we look at the world changes. Our ideas about ourselves might change. This might happen in our own journeys. It might be a single thing that happens to us that brings us to the top of the mountain. Or it might be a series of events that we need to just sort of give the Cliff Notes version to. But it's the series of events or that large awakening, whatever it may be, that is your moment on top of the mountain. So it is this is the part that most people skip, okay? The transformational part. And this is the part what's really going to start to give your story emotion. And it's going to allow your audience to kind of start to see themselves in your journey, because either they're not there yet, they're still on the back side of the mountain, and you sharing that transformative moment with people is going to give them hope or encouragement or seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, right? And so this is an important part of the journey to share. So when you think about your own journey, you think about what does that moment look like for you when things finally started to make sense? There was a big pivot, usually something along those lines. Again, I'm just going to use my own story. So now we know historical context that I was a news broadcaster and I really loved what I did for work, but I hated the types of stories that I was telling. Now, I will tell you, many, many things happened between me being that young journalist and me sharing this next part of my story, but I'm not going to fill in all those details because they're irrelevant. We're talking like 20 years worth of stuff happened, right? But my transformative moment was when I was sitting, and this was about 5 years ago, when I was sitting at home thinking, there's got to be more, because I love what I do. And, working as a video journalist, working as a video marketer, still telling people stories. But I started to look out on the landscape of social media, and it was that kind of stuff again. It took me all the way back to the newsroom, where on social media, I saw the same thing that was happening when I was in the news business, which was all we're doing is filling the news feed with bad stories, with negative stories, with things that really are doing nothing to lift up our hearts and our minds and our spirits. And I didn't see where anyone, a few people here and there, but not enough of us were out there trying to fill the news feeds with good stories. And that was when I decided, a lot of times like, well, how am I going to do that? How? We're going to get so stuck in the how, we don't know how to actually move forward. And I didn't have the how figured out, but I decided I was going to build a platform. I said, well, I know how to tell stories. I'm going to just go start doing it. I was like a needle in the haystack in that moment, right? Because here I am going to jump into the social media game and try to start building a platform, starting from ground zero. I had no audience. I had no, like big time clients that were going to, push me up to the top or anything like that. It just was this mom of, 2 kids and a wife, and had a long history and a long knowledge around what to do. And I decided to bring it into this space. That was really when I created LIGHTbeamers, because it was like, I'm going to use my voice. I made a decision. So that top of the mountain moment for me was making the decision to like do something with this career and not just keep getting a paycheck from people where I was, working, but actually to do something that mattered, that would have an impact, that would change the landscape. And so for me, that's my top of the mountain moment. And when I started LIGHTbeamers and I started getting out there and I started building community around my work, what I learned was that people, mainly women, because that's mostly my audience, they were coming to me and they were like, April, we love everything you're talking about. Hey, get out there, share your story. Let's share the good news, da, 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 da. And they're like, and we don't know how to do it. We don't know how to share our story. We're scared to death. This makes me extremely uncomfortable. I teach a lot on live streaming because I've been in video my whole career. So I'm like, get on video. And they're like, no way, no how am I getting on video? So that is when the light bulb went off for me, that the whole point that I had been going here this whole time was that I was being called forward to help. And that made me feel really, really good because I was like, well, good gracious, I know how to help you guys do that. Hence this story formula. I'm like, okay, let me sit down and figure out my own methodology. When I'm going and I'm getting stories from people, what am I looking for? And I'm like, these are the 3 components that I look for in every single interview. So let me teach this to you guys so that now I, can share this with other people, and you don't have to wait for a video producer or a reporter to come to your house and pull the story out of you. You can do it yourself and you can start sharing it. So that for me, without a doubt, is my own brand's top of the mountain moment. It all started to make sense, why I had never given up on this career, why I had stayed the course, even though, it didn't always feel satisfying. This was something that felt extremely satisfying, and it was amazing. Yeah.
I wonder at the end of when you get to the transformational moment and you have this realization that you can bring people along with you, almost everybody at that moment realizes, oh, I had to go through all that shit.
For a reason.
Because I couldn't get here to teach you guys what you need to know unless I went through all the shit. You don't need to know all the shit I went through, right? But no. I went through it so that you don't have to.
Totally.
And that is another big thing that people, again, it's part of the story. Like, it also helps with your mindset. It's like, oh, that's why I went through all of this stuff.
Well, I will tell you, doing this work, and I have clients tell me all the time, like, we'll go through a story session and they're like, this is like therapy, it's very healing. It's very, you get a lot of clarity about yourself and what what this journey is for. And you start to see the point of it, and you start to realize and have, a sense of thankfulness for all that stuff that you did go through, I without question, I would not be here today doing this work and having this conversation with you if I had not started my career the way that I did, doing the things that I did, learning the ropes. I mean, I learned a lot as a news reporter. I learned how to hustle. I learned how to get interviews fast. I think that's one of the things that has made me so successful in my career, is that I can go in and get people to tell their story to me very quickly. It doesn't take long for me to actually dig underneath the layers and get the story out, because I had to learn how to do that in a news environment where you're churning and burning stories like crazy. So there's a lot of really good things that came out of that time period, even though I didn't always love the types of stories I was telling. And I look back on that now and I see it, and I'm so grateful. I'm so, so grateful, because that's the skill I bring to the table, and just having that awareness around, wow, this is what I like and this is what I don't like. And this is where a lot of people actually stay stuck. They know what they don't like, but, and I look back on my 28-year-old self, or whatever I was back then, probably 25, and I realized how thankful I am that I had the fortitude I left that business after 5 years of being in it, which is like nothing, right? So I left that business, and it was a job that everyone had coveted, my family, everybody, like, what, you're leaving the news business? You worked so hard. I went to school for it. I mean, I clawed my way into it because it is a hard business to get into. And then I left, and everyone thought I was crazy. And I look back on that now, and again, I listened to my gut. I listened to my own intuition, and I knew that I would be okay. A lot of people never do that. They never take those steps, and they stay stuck. And so those are really the people that think they don't have a story to share, because they're so stuck in it, they can't see past it. And so that might take a little more excavating. So it's not like we just sit down in 20 minutes and we've got your story, figured out. There's some work to be done sometimes with people's stories. So I would say that if that's anyone listening, to give yourself some grace, but to also allow this process that I'm walking you through, it to be an opportunity and an invitation to move you forward. Because it really is story work. We're talking about visibility and messaging and branding. It really is personal, and it really is quite healing.
So once somebody has looked at the top of the mountain at their before, and they've climbed the mountain and they've gotten to the top, and there's the transformation, that's the middle. What's the after?
So the after is what I call the other side. And again, think about being on top of that mountain and you've been climbing it. You're alone and you're up there and you're seeing the beautiful view and the vista. And then when you start to go down the mountain, oh my gosh, you're just running, because you're I'm so excited. I have to get to the bottom of the mountain and share with somebody what I just experienced or what I now know. This is where our brand lives. So the other side, speaking to business people, this is where our brand lives. Okay. So when you get down to the other side, this is when you now say, this is the product, this is the service, this is the what I want to go tell people. This is what I want to help them with. This is what I want my audience to know. Right. So whatever that is for you, it's going to be different for everybody, but this is where you get to that message. When you look at your own story, what does it say? What is the point of it? And that was really kind of I got to let's share our stories, shine a light. Let's bring our stories to the forefront, because the more that we can be sharing our stories, we will help people. We will, move the needle for them. Our stories can be about our audience, and it's not about us. And so the more we can get people to use their voice, and the more we can get them to show up and be visible, the better our world is going to be. The problem is we got so many people stuck. We've got so many people not willing to show up. We've got people that are scared to get on video. Again, I tell my audience, I'm scared to get on video. I'm like, you're making a story about you. You're making a story all about you. Stop doing that. Get on video and get out there and get talking to your audience. The story is about your audience. Get to the other side of your story. Hold on to that.
I 100% agree. I have the same message, over communicate. And I think the funny part is people say, oh, there's so much information. Nobody wants to see me. There's the world is too noisy. I don't need to show up.
Yeah.
And it's just such a lie that we tell ourselves, because the more that we can humanize, like you use the word humanize, these stories and tell the humanistic side of your brand, the more people can identify with you and the way you particularly tell your story.
And you will magnetize people to you.
Yes.
That is when your brand will grow. I mean, if you're over there, here's a great marker. Is your business at the level that you want it to be? Are you making the type of money that totally wows you? And if the answer is no to either one of those, I would suggest you try our method here and give it a try. And again, not just once, because this goes back to the thing I wanted to also share, is you can't just share that story once and then run away. And then say, well, I shared my story and nobody bought my products. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. We do live in a very noisy world, and the old rule of marketing was 7. People had to hear things 7 times, hear and see it 7 times before they would ever take action. I believe that number has tripled now. I don't have any scientific evidence towards this other than just my own observation, but I do believe we need to be out there hitting people over the head with it, and it's going to feel weird to us because it feels like, gosh, I think this all the time. I feel like all I ever do is say the same thing over and over and over again. If you feel like that, I would say you're doing it right.
I feel the same thing. Also, you might be feeling like, I'm so sick of myself.
Hearing myself.
I'm sick of hearing myself. I'm sick of looking at myself on video. I'm sick of writing about the same things. But it doesn't land with everybody at the same time. They're on their own journey, and they might hear it the first 21 times, and the 22nd time they're like, oh, I need to be visible. You know what? I need to be visible. It's just,
Totally.
you have to repeat yourself. You can't get sick of yourself. That's the thing.
Yeah, and you know, the reason why, the number one reason why people are choosing not to be visible and they're not showing up and they're not being consistent is because they're making the story. They're making the story about them. You're letting yourself be the character of your story, and it's really about your audience. So, you know, one of the exercises that I talk about is, and I can share this real quick too. It's a flashlight exercise again, LIGHTbeamers. So I love to do things with light, and I see our stories and I see what's so important about what we do being a flashlight. And if you think about I wish I had one here to illustrate, but if you think about the bottom of the flashlight, that's where the battery goes in, right? And so that beginning of the bottom of the flashlight is that battery. And the battery to me is about our own personal why. So it has to start with you, right? The story starts with you. So you have to be tapped into like, why are you out there in business anyway? Like, why are you doing this? And this can be like, it can be about money. Like, I want to earn a living. I want to provide for my family. I want to be able to take family trips and afford those. I mean, it can be very self-serving, and that's okay. We are allowed to have personal goals. Okay. Doesn't make you greedy, doesn't make you a bad person because you want something, because you want a new house or you want a better couch or you want a car, you know, like that doesn't make you a bad person. It's usually a little bit deeper than cars and houses though. It's really about providing usually for your family, you know, rising above old stories of poverty, things like that. It can be about stuff that is very, very personal to you. The second part of your why is your business why. So why this business? You could go out, we have unbelievable options in this world, and especially in this country, as to the type of work that we can do. You know, I could have chosen a lot of different things. Why did I choose storytelling? You know, and I have to tap into that. I have to tap into why I care so much about showing up and teaching other people how to share their story. Why is it important? Instead of going and being an accountant or a lawyer or a stay-at-home mom, like why your business matters to you. What's the mission that you're trying to do? So those are the two whys you really want to tap into: your personal why and your business why, and that's your battery. That battery will keep that light on, right? If you don't have that plugged in, it gets really hard to go and show up. It gets hard to do those Facebook Lives. It gets very hard to turn on that flashlight. The middle part is where this is where your story will help you kind of figure out the how and the what. So, you know, what is the thing that you're wanting to share? Like, what are your products and services? What are the more mechanical pieces of your business? How are you going to do this, right? How are you going to get the message out? How are you going to reach people? So getting on social media, you know, going to networking meetings, like whatever your modality is for reaching out and getting that light to shine to those people. And then the light part, the part where the light goes out, is you have to be connected and identified to the who. Who are you talking to? Who do you want to serve? And, you know, our flashlight, and I think this will be very helpful for a lot of people, when you think of a flashlight turning on, it doesn't illuminate the whole world. So stop trying to talk to the whole world. You have to just be targeted on your audience. So you don't have to be so niche down that you're specific to like, you know, one group of people. But I do feel like you need to be focused on exactly who your audience is. So that flashlight exercise will kind of tap into like the point of all of this. And it will help them. You know, like I would just ask myself, if I catch myself getting in my own way, listen, I still do it too. There's days where, you know, I think, oh, this content's really not that good. I mean, I think I'm not going to share it.
I do, and then I'll be like, too. I mean, I'm a content creator. Yeah, you have to really talk yourself off the ledge, really.
And then I just think of that flashlight, and I'm like, well, am I willing to turn my flashlight off? And the answer for me is always no. I'm not willing.
That's so great.
And so I get up and get out of my own way, and I share that piece of content, even if it is piece of shit. I don't care. Like somebody will, maybe somebody
will benefit from
it, you know.
Somebody's at the bottom of their mountain and they need that piece of content right now. Yeah.
And it just doesn't have to be perfect, you know. I think that's another thing that keeps people from showing invisible and doing the things, the Facebook Lives, I hear this all the time, you know, is that it's not perfect. I don't feel fully ready.
This is a great example of a not perfect piece of content, right? Like we are online right now. It is April 7th. Everybody is online right now. It's 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. So this is like a prime time that people are online.
Right.
Both of our internets are buffering and it's hard to hear some of the things that we said, and some of our video is pixelated, but we still put it out there. So there is never perfect content. Even the people who are professional, like they make mistakes in their content. They use, I was actually listening to a really big guy that I follow, and he used the word, he should have used the word imply, but he used the word infer. And like, does that change anything for me? Right. Like, who cares, right?
Who cares?
So yes, this message is so important and unique. I love this flashlight analogy. I think it's really helpful that the flashlight doesn't need to shine on the whole world. You don't need to solve the whole world's problems. You need to help your audience, your particular segment of your audience, solve their problems. Such a great, and you're such a pleasure to listen to. How can people work with you? Like people who really want to get their story told or like become more visible. How can people connect with you?
I'm pretty easy to find because I am at LIGHTbeamers everywhere. So LIGHTBEAMERS. And the website, lightbeamers.com, if you go there, the very first thing you're going to see is a big yellow button that says something about get the story formula. So you can go and get that button, click that button, and it will take you to a page where you can sign up with your email and download that story formula that I basically shared in this broadcast. But there's some exercise, like I take it a little bit more of like an exercise where I, kind of walk you through it. I ask a lot of questions in there as if I were asking you the questions if I were interviewing you. So it gets you kind of stirring up and excavating that story a little bit more. You will also, once you download that story formula, another page will pop up. I actually have a little mini course that's like 5 videos where I take that story formula and I really teach it on a little bit of a deeper level for you. So if you want a little hand holding and you want some instruction, that course is called Find Your Story. It will pop up as soon as you download that story formula for free. This story course, which is called Find Your Story, will pop up and you can get it for $11. So if you get that, you will be invited into a private Facebook group of just very, very small group, just people who have gone through that course. And so you can share your assignments with me in there and I will talk to you. Okay, so I'll be there to like help you. So that's
super generous because what people really want is feedback on their
exactly right. And it's a place to kind of hold yourself accountable because you're like, okay, I'm going to do my assignments. I'm going to put number 1 in there, number 2, there's 5 assignments. And they're really short. Like, honestly, I've had people tell me they've gone through the whole course in about 40 minutes because it's not like one of those courses that needs to sit on your shelf. It's one of those courses that actually help you get something out into the world like tomorrow. So, and then my main community, the private community that I run on Facebook, is free to join, and that's called the LIGHTbeamers community. So that should be pretty easy to find. It's a Facebook group that is free to join, and I do story prompts in there every week. We do a Monday story prompt. I teach on storytelling as much as I can, and then I do a Wednesday prompt, and our community is open every single Wednesday for anyone and everyone to go live. And we do that because I want people practicing their video and live streaming skills. And you can get feedback in there. You can say, okay, April, this was my first one. What do I need to know? And like, if I see people like shooting their phone, their live video, they hold it way down here, and we get this up the nose shot, I'm going to tell you, hold your phone up in front of your face. Like, that's going to give you a better camera angle so that, because your audience doesn't want to see up your nose. So stop doing that. So
what's the name of your group again? I want to put your group in the comments. It's what's the name of your free group?
The LIGHTbeamers community.
Just LIGHTbeamers, not the LIGHTbeamers?
Yeah, LIGHTbeamers community.
Okay, I've got that in there. I've got all of the ways to get in touch with you. Are you also on Instagram too?
At LIGHTbeamers.
Excellent. I will put that in there too.
Yep, LIGHTbeamers, and then Facebook.com/LIGHTbeamers is my business page.
Yep.
I
And
do.
then I've got your homepage and your Facebook page, and I'll put your Instagram page, and I put your group. There's a lot of places that you guys can get in touch with April.
Those are the places I hang out. Facebook and Instagram are my two platforms of choice. Those are my favorites, and so that's where I live. And my private group, LIGHTbeamers Community, I'm extremely accessible in there. I make myself very
generous.
So, but definitely, if they just do that little Find Your Story course, that's a much smaller group. I mean, literally, there's probably 50 people in there because people come and then they leave. They come and then they leave. They just have a rotation of just like come and get the work while you need it, and then you can get out of that group because there's nothing else that we do in there except focus on those five little tutorials that I give about the story arc, the story formula, and I can help you.
Yeah, if you, I really cannot suggest this strongly enough. Please start telling your story, whether it's on your website at your about page or in your offers or in your social media or in your blogs. Like, please start telling your story because your audience needs to hear it, because although you may not see yourself, you're the leader to them. You may just be climbing up the mountain, but there's somebody at the bottom of the mountain who needs to hear your story too. So April, this was super generous, very actionable 3 steps plus the little the flashlight exercise afterward. I have transcribed the whole thing so you can just actually read through if you don't want to watch the video. But I am so appreciative, and I do hope that people take you up on this offer because there is such a compelling nature to telling our story, and you have really explained it very well today. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's my pleasure. This is the thing I could talk about over and over again. And so I do. And so I would encourage you to find the thing that you can talk about over and over again and just get out there, because right now, in this time of 2020, during a pandemic, we need more leaders. We need people that will shine that light for us. Yes. It may not solve the epidemic or the pandemic in this case. It may not bring a cure to the virus, but it will bring a cure to our hearts. And so we need this now more than ever. And even if it is about losing the 20 pounds, I mean, there's nothing that you're doing that's too superficial. Everything matters. So get out there and do it.
Yes. Amen. Thanks, April. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.